It has turned into the most violent and environmentally unfriendly eco-protest ever. But what began with resistance to plans to replace a park in Istanbul with apparently a shopping mall has now turned into protests right across Turkey. They don't care for a government, apparently, which has been seen elsewhere as a bridge between East and West, Islam and Europe. Many of the protesters think the government is betraying modern Turkey's secular tradition. The Prime Minister claims the protesters are walking hand in hand with terrorism. Paul Mason is in Taksim Square in Istanbul. Paul.
Yes, Jeremy, the crowd you see behind me are just a small part of the 10 or 20,000 people who've been occupying Taksim Square below and the gardens next to it for the best part of a week now, since the police moved in to clear a small tent camp, which, as you say, was there to try and defend the square against redevelopment. So the Prime Minister calls them terrorist sympathisers and extremists. I can tell you for a fact that description doesn't accord with the facts. They are mainly young, quite secular, quite urban, quite middle class. In that, they are quite similar to the people who made the Occupy protests and the people who, at the very beginning, were in Tahrir Square. With one difference. What you see below me is a space, and it's quite extensive here, that has been free of policing now for 3 nights. The police had to retreat, and the whole place is being more or less held together with, I don't know if you can see it, Turkish folk music and a lot of goodwill. They've been bombarded for 4 hours fairly indiscriminately with tear gas, and they do fear that the police will make an attempt tonight to come in again. I was up till 4 this morning to see what happened when the police tried that last night. This is how riots start. After 4 nights of clashes, police vacated the part of Istanbul around Taksim Square. The protesters fanned out, building barricades on all approaches. When the clashes came, they were brutal. CS gas, rubber bullets, water cannon, and the protesters made use of what they could. Then, perfectly ordinary people formed human chains to rip up the pavements and build. They fought sporadically late into the night. Even now, at 3 o'clock in the morning, the rioting is still going on, right here in central Istanbul. And the people around me are not some extremist hardcore. These are ordinary members of society, educated, mainly middle class. And the great mystery for the Turkish government is why they are here and in such massive numbers. Meanwhile, there was violence in 4 big Turkish cities. In Ankara, the capital, reports of tens of people injured. This was the scene in Izmir. In all cases, it was young, urban, secular people fighting it out with the police. But their real beef is with the AK party, moderate Islamists, who they say are pushing things too far.
We are protecting the modern Turkish Republic, and Tayyip Erdogan hates modern Republic. He's trying to make his own country, this Islamic country. And he hates modern people. He hates modern Turkish Republic.
This is not about alcohol. It's not about Recep Tayyip Erdogan. We're not here for Atatürk. We're here for revolution.
Some people clearly are here for Atatürk, but it's a mixed bunch, isn't it?
Well, this is something that is good for us. This is going to help us have a dialogue with everyone around us. We need your help, not to protect democracy, to protect our rights. This is about humanity. This is a Turkish Spring now. And this is never going to end, not this soon.
Students, teacher, everyone is here. We are all Muslim.
The police now are facing charges of overkill. In this footage, shot by a local journalist, a mosque turned into a makeshift hospital treats injuries consistent with CS gas rounds hitting people's bodies. Later, the police tried to break in here to make arrests. and at the main hospital, even the medics were having a tough time.
There have been so many traumas because of the tear bombs they have been shooting. They have been shooting tear bombs to all of the people, and they were shooting tear bombs on
Close range.
I have been shot by, I have been shot by a tear gas bomb.
By day, there's calm, but at this university, where they're getting a liberal education, even the bar is banned from serving alcohol, not by law, but by the personal order of the Prime Minister. This politics professor told me the issue of preserving one park is just a final straw for the urban young.
The secular part of the population is roughly about probably 35–40% of the electorate. It includes the liberal-minded, the Democrats, the urban, the middle class, the well-educated, the religious minorities, the Alevis. They are all part of the secular minority. It is a minority, but it's not a small minority. It's 40%, sometimes depending on the issues, over 50%. And they feel threatened by Erdogan's policies.
Today, the Turkish PM called the protesters extremist elements, arm in arm with terrorism. It might play well with his electoral base, but analysts believe he's in danger of alienating an entire generation, above all, women.
Whenever he talks about certain issues, women are always involved in what he says. Women should give birth to 3 children at least, he says. We should have a population policy where each family has to have 3 children at least. He talks about abortion. He talks about cesarean being made illegal because it's not right.
They'd spent the day singing and reciting poetry, but at nightfall, a huge, pervasive cloud of gas descended on the square. This is already bigger than any of the Occupy protests and bigger than anything seen in Greece at the height of the troubles there. What stops it from being a Tahrir Square type moment is simply this. It may be that the secularists and liberals and the youth are ranged here in tens of thousands, but a good 50% or more of Turkish society is Islamist, does support Prime Minister Erdogan and does not support the people here or their lifestyles. But on these streets, where solidarity is doled out in squirts of anti-tear gas fluid, all they've got in the face of that is defiance.
Well, I'll be joined shortly by a protester from Istanbul and by the academic Dr. Ayşe Kabuçu, who's here in the studio. But first of all, let's go to Morocco, where the Turkish government minister Mevlut Çavuşoğlu is there on a visit and is able to talk to us. Minister, when you see these scenes of protesters being tear-gassed going right around the world, it's not doing your country much good, is it?
Well, first of all, I have to make a correction. I'm not the minister. I'm the vice chair of the Party for Foreign Affairs.
Forgive me, our mistake.
Okay, no problem.
Anyway, go on, tell us what you think.
Well, regarding this, what's going on in Turkey right now, it started with an innocent protest, and later on it has been used by the radicals, some of the radicals. We never say that the whole people on the at the Taksim Square or somewhere else in Turkey are the radicals, but there are marginals actually who misuse this atmosphere and then vandalize the cities and they have been breaking down the cars and civilian cars and the private shops, cash machines, and then the police cars and the ambulances, and they have been attacking even the people who are trying to help the ones who are injured. The thing is, we can never actually, neither in Turkey, nor in Germany, nor in France, as it happened before, or in UK, it happened recently, we cannot never support the excessive power used by the police, or tear gas, or pepper spray, whatever you call for it. It is unacceptable in any democratic society. And therefore, at the beginning, police actually used the excessive force, and later on, Prime Minister called for investigation, and then now police is withdrawn from the Taksim Square. Now, I just received a good news actually that the people coming from Beşiktaş to Taksim Square actually had a good dialogue with the police, agreed that there will be a peaceful demonstration, and police let them go. We need this calm and actually very calm demonstrations in Turkey, peaceful demonstrations in Turkey.
Right. Now,
therefore,
can you just tell us, to an outsider, a lot of this is very hard to understand. For example, what is this issue about alcohol?
Well, regarding the alcohol, this is, I mean, it started with the project on the Taksim Square. If you come back to the alcohol, we are not banning the alcohol, actually. This is the false information, the fake information. The government or the parliament just regulated the sales of alcohol, as it is in UK. You remember the pubs are closed at 10 o'clock during the weekdays and 11 p.m. during the weekends.
Sadly, no longer.
No longer. It used to be like this when I was a student there until recently. And in the United States also there are many regulations. You cannot buy alcohol on Fridays the whole day. So is anything about the religions or is anything about the secularism? So this is a kind of regulation in Turkey. It's not the banning. Personally, it can be different way. I can say something else even though I'm representing the party. Nevertheless, if you bring this in another line, like the government is banning the alcohol because of the Islamist policies, this is not true. This is actually the false information.
Now,
I have to.
You know the
like
Prime Minister very well. How worried is he?
Well, worried about what?
Worried about the situation in your country.
Well, Prime Minister has the self-confidence, and Prime Minister is distinguishing the people who are demonstrating peacefully and the radicals who are vandalizing the city and, as I explained, the breaking down the private shops and destroying the streets and the buildings and everywhere. So Prime Minister is very well distinguishing between these two groups. I think it should be also distinguished by yourself as BBC and by the press. We have the respect for the people who are demonstrating their wishes or desires or protesting the government or what's going on in a peaceful manner. Okay. And regarding this project is also, as I see on the main news channels, you are covering like we are building the shopping mall at the square. This is also fake information that I have to correct as well. In this project, there is no shopping mall, and only the old military barrack actually was considered to rebuild there, which was built during the Ottoman time.
Thank you very much for joining us. I know it's jolly late in Rabat, but thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Well, now we're joined from the protests by one of the protesters, Zeynep, and we're joined also here in the studio by the academic Dr. Aisha Kubuchku. I made a mess of it.
It's all right.
So
I'm
sorry.
used to it.
Forgive me. Now, Zeynep, tell us what is it you're protesting about?
Okay, so...
Speak.
Okay, so as you all now know, it all started with the police attack to the peaceful demonstrators, the protesters that were sleeping in the Gezi Park at 5 a.m. and turned into a large-scale, countrywide movement, a sort of social awakening. So we're protesting actually against the authoritarian, the repressive discourse, repressive regime of the government, and it's actually accumulation of everything
I'm
has
sorry
been going
to be
on for
obtuse
the
here.
last 6 years.
Right. Why don't you just vote him out of office if you don't like him?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Turkey is a functioning democracy. Why don't you just vote your government out of office if you don't like it?
Oh, okay. So voting is just one aspect of democracy. So one other aspect, very important aspect of democracy, is the peaceful demonstrations and the peaceful protests. So now we're using that right. So we are rightful to hold these protests if the government, if the Prime Minister is not letting us in in all the decision-making processes. So here, I have to disagree with the minister with what he said about the alcohol regulations. What we care is not about banning or not banning something. It's about the mentality lying behind it. So in order to enact laws, in order to apply them before, you have to consider all the segments of society. You have to consider their sensitivities. And after this ban, you cannot go and say that, okay, so what the religion stipulates cannot be wrong. So this discourse is really dangerous, I think.
Okay.
So
Thank you very
we're
much.
against this mentality.
Very kind of you. Thanks very
You're
much
welcome.
indeed. Now, what do you make of what's happening in your country?
Well, it is a complicated story to tell because Turkey is a complicated story. I know it would be nice if we could summarize everything in just a soundbite, but I don't think that's possible. And I've been looking forward to this conversation with you to try to interrogate, to try to understand what's happening.
You better gallop through it.
So what is happening? I agree, actually, my interpretation agrees very much with the protester there. I think this is about people's desire to live their lives the way they want to in their own cities, in public spaces, and to make their own decisions about their lives. It's as simple as that. I think it's a desire for freedom. And I know it sounds very abstract, but you would believe it if you were in Taksim Square right
Sure,
now.
but it's a
what that
democracy.
looks
What's
like.
the problem?
Well, it's not the problem of Turkey as such, but I think what we're dealing with is the problem of democracy altogether. So we all know about the tyranny of the majority. So we recognize that the AKP, let's say, got 50% of the vote, 52% of the vote. So what do you do with that? What kind of authority does that give you over whole society? That is the question. What are the bounds of that authority? What can you intervene in? What kind of laws can you make with that kind of mandate, with a democratic mandate? But before you will ask me another question, I want to say also that the very meaning of democracy is at stake here. And I think what we are seeing in Taksim, what we're seeing across Turkey, is very much an experimentation with direct democracy. It's an effort to imagine other ways of living together. So it's not simply about winning the majority in parliamentary elections.
Okay, thank you very much.